The first one I'm going to read was published in Stormwash Environmental Poems, edited by Hiromi Yoshida. Persephone Again, March 2022. Persephone, again and again, leaves her cozy underworld home, the surprisingly attentive hubby, and rises to assuage her mother's sorrow. Peeks her head above the ground. Green sprouts poke up. Some days, some years, some centuries, she'd rather wait, warmed by the underworld fires, the glow of the arched fireplace. They forget, she says softly, whispering into the wind turned warm, birds twittering at her breath. I can only do so much. The sunflower seed bursts to sprout in the aftershock of the bombs, sacred earth everywhere, tainted in mindless rituals of war, the thirst for power and oil hunger greed, forsaking the pure water of earth, the long starseed hoed earth. The ice shelf fed by Glenser and Conger glaciers in Antarctica collapses. The Arctic ice melts. Temperatures rise, the bombs burst. Persephone, patient, patient. Long eons are morning and night. And I often look at Greek classical figures, particularly the goddesses. Under a Greek moon, the goddesses shift from shadow to light. Artemis stretches a lean, athletic leg from the side of a rocky hill. She calls her dogs and steps into the soft light that gentles the craggy landscape. Waking from a firm bed, the child I was rises and tiptoes to the small window in the room she sleeps in, looking over the Myconian hills, the whitewashed town, feeling the quiet as the last revelers find their ways to homes and beds. My father enters late in the night after my mother has watched over my fevers and hard breathing. From between the pillars of the Parthenon, Athena looks coolly over her city, a smile barely lifting the corner of her mouth as she separates from the shadow cast by the moon. The frost and heat of my parents' smoldering arguments, the chill of unspoken betrayals, dog my steps as I walk across the stark paths of the island's routes from town to beach by myself, with the grown-ups under the brightness of the Aegean sun, under the glow of the dense Milky Way. Demeter walks the fallow field, edging into the sun-cast shade of an old olive tree. She sees the green that will rise when the sun and spring return. She remembers her daughter far away, further than distance and time can traverse. The child I was feels the hot sun baked into the golden sand of Platyssia, closes her eyes, seeing the red streams of eyelid veins, and fervently thinks, remember, remember for the dark times ahead. Hera sleeps through the windows and doors of darkened houses, peering into the minds of sleeping women, those who would be women and girls, to gauge the strength of this and the rising generations of thought and possibilities. In a late afternoon, turned red and murky, my father holds my hand as we walk along the dirt track to the beach looking for my mother. I see the print of her distinctive, ridge-soled shoe on the sandy trail, and my heart chills. Hestia of the hearth and home whispers to me from the tumbled boulders of a maybe altar on the rock-lined road to another place and time, yet this place and time. Waking in my bed, kicking the sand along the path, Falling into the net of the white-starred Milky Way, the child I was rises and tiptoes to the small window in the room she sleeps in, holds court over a dry garden from which the boat-filled harbor is at her feet, looks over the Mekonian hills, the whitewashed town, the quiet within the noise as the last revelers find their ways to homes and beds, as the fishermen mend their nets hooked over their big toes, as the pelican flies over the harbor, beak fish filled. She sees, I see, the moonlight shift to shapes of hardy goddesses and powerful protectors of land and sea, cities and hope. Under the Greek moon, the goddesses return to where they left, what they left undone, resting in the shadows until remembered. Athena. The dark juices bathed my mother's brow in the muscular cave of my father's stomach. Resolute, Metis held on, waiting for her pregnancy for me to come to term that I could break free from this prison. Springing from my father's forehead, they would say, armored for battle, clear-eyed strategist would be my father's triumph. But they were wrong. It was her strength in the dark which bore me forth, propelling me into the clear Olympian air through her fear and his tyranny to my freedom and leadership, while she, depleted, dissolved to rest. She runs through his veins now, breaking the old bonds of his insurgency, while I labor in the world to free all those trapped in the dark maw. Now to Bloomington. The house across the street. The house across the street has closed a chapter. The family with its name on the mailbox is gone. The children grown and gone. Late nights, the last 2 years, a silent ambulance parks by the driveway again and again. I wake to flashing red lights. The plump, blonde, amiable woman with a drain under her neck skin is out less often than gone. Winters, the narrow gray road is a river between distant shores. Summers, the trees and deep foliage in my yard screen out the outside. I see them come and go when the view is clear, when I am outside, walking by, looking out the window. The blonde woman appears less often. I wonder, but don't ask, don't check. We are barely neighbors. One day, a long line of cars park along the road. I guess, wake, gathering to commemorate. In time, the white car she drove disappears, and then the man comes and goes. He looks thinner. Months pass, a year, and then the moving trucks arrive. Days go by. It's a slow move. More and more boxes and furniture leave the house. People come with cars and cleaning mops with gardening tools. And then the house looks empty. The yard a little neglected where it had been kept tightly trimmed before. No curtains in the windows, dark inside. A light forgotten in the garage shines at night through the row of narrow glass trimming at the top. Days pass, 1 week, another. The house is there, but no one comes and goes. One day the for sale sign appears. They are gone. A small resolution. I feel the house as I walk by. Do homes hold memories? I think yes, at least the ripples of living and dying. We lived across that narrow street for almost 20 years, and I spoke twice with her. Gaggle of boys. The gaggle of white boys cross the street and bicycle lane where I stand straddling my bike, waiting for the light. They are young, high school old or barely college going or about to go in this college town. They all wear shorts, some light-hued t-shirt, and almost amble as they hold a close connection pack-wise. 4 of them are within 4 or 5 inches height of each other, but one is barely at the shoulder of the boy nearest him. Maybe he'll have a college growth spurt, I think, or maybe it's his heritage. They intrigue me in their show of almost insouciance and slight self-consciousness, wearing their solidarity and silent plea for individuality on their sleeves, the soft musk of an unspoken desire, a soft cloud around them in their progress down the sidewalk towards the center of this college town in a golden mid-spring dusk, the last day of April. Protest. Gaza tears helpless far away. The students gather on the Indiana lawn, beat drums, chant, call for a change. Divest, 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 all support of anything that leads and lends to war. The counter-protesters dance in the streets. Here and there, a different flag wrapped around the shoulders. 1 police, 2 police, 3 police, more, state police, armored truck, riot gear, batons. Huffy, stuffy, mostly men, big in their assurance of power given by their masters. A line of dark green, dark khaki-clad, helmeted men walking slowly in, slowly moving towards the children. The children fall, the children run. On a college campus in Indiana, they fall to the pavement, young, vulnerable, like the children whose deaths they remember, zip-tied hands throwing up in the grass, the police, the paramilitary, the herald of power, smug in their gear. No free speech, no safety here or there. Iphigenia and Isaac. It's always the sacrifice of innocence and stoking of fear, control, as though a whimsical god or goddess could be appeased through the slaughter of the young and vulnerable. Agamemnon et al. Is desperate for war, becalmed offshore, willing to sacrifice his one daughter, Iphigenia, beloved of Achilles. Artemis, virgin goddess, could be stoked to stir the winds, so Agamemnon believed, through the blood and life of his tender Iphigenia, she who pined for the great warrior to be. Artemis, not one of the 3 goddesses Paris had to choose from. Artemis, virgin of the moon and hunt. Would she thirst for the blood of this maid, the tender Iphigenia, to raise the winds? Come, marry your love, the girl was told, lured to sacrifice and death, as if only the blood and life of the uncorrupted would sway that above human perception. Agamemnon could have chosen differently. He could have turned away. Let's wrap it up, boys, and go home. Let my daughter live to brilliant old age, bearing me many grandchildren with the almost invulnerable Achilles. Or let some other hero take his place. Maybe they, like he, would be unpierceable without the nasty, vulnerable heel. Let Menelaus deal with his own problems. Let him divorce Helen with an oath or curse of good riddance. What tales could be told and love songs written of the many generations born from that act of kindness and turning away. What could have been. And whether or not Artemis replaced the girl with a deer, still innocent, the men could have chosen differently. Abraham on Mount Moriah lied to his son Isaac as they walked the final steps to the peak of sacrifice, Abraham telling the beloved son that God would provide the sacrifice as they walked to the stone where Abraham was ready to slit the throat of his only child, the long-desired bearer of his name into the future, the fearful leading the guileless to slaughter. And whether or not a ram tangled in the briars to take Isaac's place, what can we say of protecting or wasting the young against even the greater mystery we don't know. The Testament loyalists and classicists may shriek, "You've got it all wrong. Acts of faith," they say, pagan traditions translated to oral and literary form, that we may learn of the travails and fears of our ancestors in a dangerous world, reassuring us that we are more civilized or evolved as the children die in Gaza, bounded by the burning sea and buried under the arrogance of men. Who will replace the young bodies, the old, the in-between, with the ram or the deer? It is a dangerous world. The innocent, the delicate, the mortal, still lured to slaughter, their throats slit, bodies bombed, blood spilled, flesh burned in the ceremonies of self-validation and territorial disputes, the ravages of the senses and fear, the waste of the most precious fruit on the one, the only planet, the only altar we all stand upon. We shred ourselves on the shattered earth when we turn a blind eye. A little gentler. Elephant born. I hate the adage, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." It can maim you, or maybe you rise in a new version, which is not the version who went through the hurt. Metamorphosis means change that is radical. Radical as dissolving the cells that shape you and taking a new shape. Melting as tiny crystals can be melted into glass, then blown, then shaped, reshaped, repurposed. Caterpillars to chrysalis to butterflies and all that stuff. Tadpoles to frogs, eggs, embryos hatching new chicks who grow and shift again, full-feathered and fat. What doesn't kill you is horrible advice, horrible non-consolation. Rates of transformation matter. Bake whole wheat bread slices too hot, too quickly, and the would-be toast is charred and crisp. Chips, other things, edible and not, felt and seen, get brittle or never harden if the temperature is wrong. Metaphors are horrible when it comes to living beings. Tell the kangaroo, a flyer, of the labors of childbirth. If you could share a language and symbology, what would be similar, what would be so different that truly you would both see you are alien species sharing a planet. Baby horses can stand minutes, 30 more or less after birth. On savannas, in broad open spaces of danger and possibilities, some babies have to run to live, hitting the ground, almost running. Welcome to the world. Baby elephants, if their herd has not been decimated by poachers, arrive in the circle of aunties and sisters and cousins, the matriarchal ring, the caring collective. Wouldn't that be nice? To open your baby elephant eyes and feel the warm earth, the tender touching trunks reaching to your newly exposed body, your clan receiving you, and the trunk-like legs of your family, the guarding aunts, a protective stockade around you. Black beans and white rice. My mother, Vera, from time to time, would cook a pot of white rice with a sparse sprinkling of black beans in our narrow galley kitchen in the studio apartment in Elmhurst, Queens, New York City, in those strange and lonesome years after the divorce, after leaving her second, my first, Paradise Lost, Mykonos, Greece. For her, Havana, Cuba was first. She would rinse dried black beans, swishing them in the steel pot, drain the water, then fill it again an inch and a half or two above the level of the dried black beans. They would sit overnight, smooth, shining pebbles, softening and swelling, dark presences in the dark galley as we slept, something to tell fortunes by, and see the past sleeping at the bottom of a small, clear pond. The narrow kitchen and sanctuary of the third-floor studio apartment grew smaller as I grew larger. After soaking, she would cook the beans slowly and long over a low flame. The white rice would cook separately. Later, she would mix them to finish their cooking together. Those black beans, lightly dispersed through well-cooked white rice, in the Paul Revere cooking pot with the copper bottom, a remnant from her early years of marriage to my father. Black beans and white rice, contrasted and mixed, slowly cooked over a low flame as the Flushing subway number 7 on an overstreet track rumbled by half a block away. Black beans and white rice. I didn't speak Spanish. She did not speak of Havana or Cuba or not much at all. I recognized some token here to something just out of reach. The distant voice on the phone on occasional Saturdays or Sundays, long distance, but it really was long distance. That voice of my grandmother, Marina, Lubin, father to Vera, rarely spoke on the phone. That voice far away, unknown, living still in Havana. The black beans and white rice nestled together like a mosaic planned and planted, one shiny enameled square at a time, thoughtfully constructing a secret message. Vera, looking in the pot, such a simple concoction, a few black beans scattered in the ground of white rice, a strain of her unspoken feelings, deep memories, and suppressed longings. One short one? The Gray or Penelope? Tonya, what do you want to hear? Okay, let's do Penelope. Penelope. Not all 20 years spent weaving and unweaving the same rose spread on the loom. Odysseus fighting, brawling, getting lost in the land of the lotus eaters while his faithful dog and woman waited. But what was woven beyond the sight of the loom and the persistent suitors, hungry for power, for place, and this woman, or what she represented, was a steeliness of will and conviction, not loyalty to the man or even the place, but to her own standard. Penelope, weaving in concentration who she would become, not just wife or daughter, not trophy or victim, but self-tutored in the rite of her own passage.